Right now on News 4 at 10, a disagreement leads to an auxiliary police unit shutting down. We're hearing new reaction on how this will affect surrounding areas.
And after a frigid couple of days, it was a beautiful end of the weekend. I'm tracking a warm-up in store early this week in your 411 forecast.
Plus, tough competition. Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder announces he is running for mayor. Here are his plans for the city.
Live in high definition, this is Western New York's news leader. Now, News 4 at 10.
A public safety resource in Niagara County will no longer be available. The county dissolved the auxiliary police after a disagreement over carrying firearms. The volunteer-based unit is responsible for directing traffic. They are not law enforcement. News 4's Rachel Monjovi explains what happened. Rachel?
Yeah, Callan, this unit has been around for several years. There's about 12 to 25 volunteers. Lewiston Police says they were a great asset to them, but now that the unit isn't around, local police departments will have to spread out more resources.
Unfortunately, none of them chose to come to that meeting, so at this point, we're not moving forward with that unit at all.
The Niagara County Auxiliary Police is no longer in existence after being around for decades. All members of the unit are volunteers with one duty: directing traffic during events. Director of Emergency Services Jonathan Schultz says the volunteers were concerned about their safety.
Last summer, it was brought to my attention the concerns for their safety since they weren't carrying sidearms when they're out doing different events throughout the county.
Schultz says he looked into the matter with other agencies and ultimately decided they didn't want the volunteers operating like law enforcement.
They had training, but they are not law enforcement. You know, which is completely completely different trainings as black and white. You know, you shouldn't be comparing apples and oranges.
The volunteers even had similar uniforms to the police officers.
They looked almost exactly like a police officer. You would have known the difference with them.
Schultz says he called a meeting to move forward with the unit to continue their sole mission of directing traffic, but the volunteers didn't show up. Now the unit is disbanded. This means local police departments like Lewiston Police will now have to spend more money to make up for the dissolved unit.
There will be a cost associated with it. We'll still have officers that are going to be dedicated or tasked with doing those patrol responsibilities and watching crowd control and stuff as well. And the exits is just going to be a little bit less than it has been before.
Both Lewiston Police and Emergency Services tell me the auxiliary unit did great work. They served as a second set of eyes and ears for police officers. They did not respond to emergencies, just planned events. In the newsroom tonight, Rachel Monjovi, News 4 at 10.
A man in his 30s has serious injuries after he was shot in Buffalo overnight. Buffalo police tell us the man was driven to ECMC just before 1:30 this morning. Detectives believe he was shot in the vicinity you hear, that's near Broadway and Lathrop Street. If you have any information about this, call the confidential tip line at 847-2255. A local pastor is telling his congregation not to be offended by racist vandalism on church property. New Creation Fellowship pastor Stephen Anzel addressed the church this morning. This is what the vandalism was. The church is located in Cheektowaga, but this was painted on a building at the church's horse farm on Marble Road in Akron. Pastor Anzel says it was sad to see this vandalism, but he told the church members not to take it to heart.
We were told and taught through the gospel, not allow ourselves to be offended and withdraw ourselves and be discouraged. But it was an indication that these people were blind and ignorant and that they needed to hear the gospel.
The farm is undergoing renovations to be used as a space for a church youth camp this summer. Police are investigating.
Don't count me out.
Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder says he will use social media and old-fashioned politics to unseat Mayor Byron Brown. Schroeder announced he will run in the Democratic primary today. He says he would work to get police more training and encourage big developers to focus on Fillmore and Jefferson Avenues and Ontario Street. Schroeder says more needs to be done to make sure parts of the city are not left behind.
The reason why I know that I can win is that
that because I know that people are dissatisfied. I know that people realize that the Buffalo Renaissance, for some, is occurring right now. The other business districts, they need help, and I will give them the help they need.
He says as mayor, he would also encourage more women and minority-owned businesses. Schroeder served on the Erie County Legislature and New York State Assembly before becoming comptroller. Mayor Brown is seeking a fourth term in office. Only one Buffalo mayor, Jimmy Griffin, has served 16 years.
Standing up against hate. Standing up against hate.
Western New Yorkers stood in solidarity today to show their support for members of the Jewish community. The movement comes in the wake of recent anti-Semitic acts of hate in Buffalo and across the country. Lawmakers, local leaders, and the Jewish community locked arms to show strength and unity. Last month, the JCC in Amherst was evacuated when a person called in a bomb threat that turned out to be a hoax. The local JCC says an attack against their faith is an attack against everyone.
Whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, the community center is our community center, and we are all going to act as a united one to make sure that's a safe and welcoming place.
Authorities are now investigating 120 bomb threats across the country. One person has been arrested for at least 8 of the threats. South Korea's military says rival North Korea has fired a projectile into the waters off of the northeast coast. It was not immediately clear what was fired, but a spokesperson for the South Korea Defense Ministry said, quote, several projectiles flew more than 600 miles. Leader Kim Jong-un is pushing for a nuclear and missile program that can deter what he calls U.S. and South Korean hostility towards the north. A new report out by the New York Times tonight says FBI Director James Comey has asked the Justice Department to, quote, publicly reject President Donald Trump's claim that former President Barack Obama had Trump Tower phones tapped during the presidential campaign. Senior American officials tell the New York Times that Comey has argued the claim is false and must be corrected. Today, President Trump asked Congress to investigate the matter. All of this follows a series of tweets sent out by the president accusing Mr. Obama.
I think the American people have a right to know if this happened, because if it did, again, this is the largest abuse of power that I think we've ever seen.
If he falsely spread this kind of misinformation, that is so wrong. It's beneath the dignity of the presidency.
The president has not provided any evidence to back his claims. A spokesperson for the Obama administration says the accusations are false. Straight ahead at 10, a Buffalo-based business is giving back to children with disabilities. All new, find out how this family is turning their own struggles into solutions for others. Plus, celebrating a major milestone, the respected religious leader who helped ring in 200 years of service at a local church.
And rising temperatures overnight. We have a nice warm-up in store to start off the week, but I am tracking a little bit of wet weather to tell you about coming up in your forewarned forecast.